Friday morning, and welcome back. And thank you so much for coming. This week, as I talk about my book, Real Women Change the World, Letting the Good Girl Die so the Real Woman Can Live, I'm looking at chapter 5, just to share with you messages. I think it is so important that we as women, and actually as any human, get, so that we can live a better life for ourselves, as well as so that we can provide a much better life for those who are around us, those who are our employees, perhaps, our partners, our vendors, our peers. As we become more of who we are meant to be, we give permission to others to do exactly the same. So this week, as I look at chapter 5, the title may seem unusual or egotistical, whatever you choose to call it, but it really is about becoming the hero. And I put this chapter in my book for real women because, in my experience, it has been consistent. We, as women who choose to become real, who choose to become transparent and as powerful as we're possible can be at any given moment, and God willing, as we grow, our access to our power is easier. It's more natural. It's more real, and it just is. And as I believe, we are all infinitely powerful, every one of us. I don't believe any one person on this planet has more power than another. What I believe is that we perceive other people to have more power. They may have more money, they may have more influence, but they don't necessarily have more power. They've just learned how to use it. And so this particular chapter, Becoming the Hero, really addresses what happens for those of us who have reached some level of success, some level of visibility, and obvious power in some capacity. We meet others who feel powerless, who feel limited, who feel as if they have no ability to go anywhere. And they need to look at someone to say, hey, it is possible. So there's a price to pay for success. There's a price to pay for becoming public. The more people know you, the more people will form opinions about you, whether they're based on reality or not is irrelevant. You know, when you become more well-known, there are more people to form opinions. That's just a given. Accept that. And you have a choice of becoming the devil if you choose, or becoming a hero. The choice is yours, however you want to do that. I put this out there so that you make a conscious choice, because others are going to see you from their own stuff. It has nothing to do with who you are. They see you from their own stuff. I have had people who've been very angry at me because I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and I've never had a struggle in my life. The fact is, I was born in an orphanage, and I was adopted and raised in the housing projects of the inner city. But they needed to see me as a woman who had a PhD, who was successful and had 3 or 4 companies at the time. They needed to know I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth. That gave them permission to stay stuck. It gave them permission to play it small because they came from a different background. Therefore, they couldn't become all of these things that they perceived me to be. Other folks look at you differently. Other folks look and see your success, see your goodness, see your sense of peace or power, and they want that for themselves. And by making you their hero, what they are doing is saying to themselves, it's possible. We have the power, if we choose, to become that person temporarily that they put up as their hero, as their mentor, as that person that they want to know it's possible for them to become. And in all humility, if you are being a real woman, you need to own that by your choice to be out here, to be seen, to be public, you are in and of that act becoming a mentor for those who want to do the same thing. We don't have a lot of mentors for powerful women. We don't have a lot of mentors to look up to. So people are going to pick you for whatever reason. There's something about you that resonates for them. My belief is you possess qualities they already have, but they are frightened to own. And you're giving them permission to do that. I'll give you a story, share one with you that perhaps may help you see it more clearly. I had a school for 19 years, the Institute of Healing Arts and Sciences. And in that school, it was 50% of the process was on personal process, personal growth, really looking at your own wounds, looking at your own scars, looking at your own defenses, your masks, and so forth. Because I was training folks to become healers. And I don't believe you can be a healer until you've done your own healing. So there was a lot of inner work, a lot of spiritual development and emotional development that took place. And so one of the students, and then a group of them, came up with a nickname for me called the Dotty Mama. So for 19 years, I was the Dotty Mama. And this was their way of putting me on a pedestal that initially made me extremely uncomfortable. It's like, oh my gosh, when I think of the Dalai Lama, a man who embodies spirituality, I then had to step back and recognize he also embodies humanity. So here I was, the Dalai Lama, and initially embarrassed and uncomfortable, finally moved into that, saw humor in it, but also saw an ability to use that to support my students owning the Dalai Lama, if you will, within themselves, so that they could begin to own their own spirituality, their own level of growth, and their own infinite capability to create and change and grow. And one day, one of the students, a new student, imagine being a freshman walking into this, and my students were physicians, nurses, occupational therapists, massage therapists, as well as bankers and carpenters and others. But one of my freshmen walked in one day and said to me, "May I touch you?" And I said, "Certainly. I'm thinking a TAG is out or something, and they want to support me and help me put this in place." And I said, "Thank you. I would love it." And she touched my arm and turned to her girlfriend and said, "I've touched her," and walked away. And I looked at a girlfriend who was walking down the hallway with me, and she said, "Let's go outside." And we walked outside, and I said, that's embarrassing. What do I do with that? And we just stared at each other for a bit. And she said, she needs you to be her strength. She needs you to be that woman she wants to believe she can become. When people put us in that position, it does a number of things. First off, it says, I can create all kinds of false humility, and I'm not worthy, and I'm horrible, and I'm terrible, and let me list all the things about me that haven't been fully developed yet. Or we can stop and say, wait a minute. I know my truth. I know all the parts of me that are not fully developed yet. I know all the parts of me that support self-sabotage. But I also know those parts of me that I've worked really hard to develop. That those parts of me that I've really worked to bring out so I can support others. I need to own the whole package. And in doing that, the gift this woman gave me was to call me to always be that real woman, to always own that power, to always own that level of achievement I had achieved, to always own that part of me that I truly was in love with. I was also called to do that in humility. That she may be there right now, that she needs a mentor, she needs somebody to be her hero. But in time, in working with her, my desire was to bring out in her a recognition of all of her gifts, a recognition of all of the strengths she possessed that right now she wasn't seeing. And so as I walked back inside and could begin to work with her and work with all of the others in my class, I really saw that by my owning what in her eyes made me a hero, by owning all of the levels of development I had achieved, if I could ground myself in those, that's the woman I would expect me to be for the rest of this weekend of teaching. That's the woman I would expect me to live up to, rather than falling into my own method of self-sabotage, my own feeling of overwhelmed or whatever was up at any given moment in time, that I was really being called to own who she needed me to be, because there was truth there. It wasn't true that I was the only one in the world that possessed those gifts, but at this moment in time, it was true that I possessed them. We need to look at that, and we need to recognize that others will make us their heroes or their heroines. Others will make us their mentors without us even knowing it. If you've been out here long enough in the business world, I'm certain others have come to you and said, you have no idea how much you've influenced me. I'm sure you've had others say, you have no idea how what you said to me last Friday impacted me, the strength it gave me. And more times than not, we don't. More times than not, we are simply being ourselves in our best selves. And when we are real, we're not doing it to rescue or save. We're just doing it because that's who we are. So we need to own that part of ourselves that becomes the hero for others, but own it humbly and recognize that the world does need more mentors. The world does need more leaders. And as we become real women, we're being forced, if we choose, to stand up and own that. Knowing we're always in process, but owning the fact that we have to be willing to be that mentor, to be that guide for others, so that they can begin to see that none of us became real without working at it. None of us became absolutely authentic without first looking at all the parts of ourselves we ran from, owning those parts and then standing in them, owning those parts of ourselves we don't like. All they do is make us human. They don't make us bad. They don't make us false. They just make us human. As you become the hero temporarily to somebody, not permanently, do not make this an ego trip. If you make this an ego trip, you've left the realness, you've left your authentic power, and you've moved purely into ego. It's all about self-betrayal over there. Step back into humility. And notice here, I want to bring in, because this book is about the good girl and the real woman. The good girl's desire is to be perfect. She's doing everything she can to be good enough, but always from a belief that she isn't. Always believing she's not quite good enough yet. She's got to become more perfect. And no matter who she is, no matter how much personal growth she does, she will never be perfect. Perfection doesn't exist. Because the reality is, what does perfect mean? My sense of the perfect woman may be dramatically different than your sense of the perfect woman. So which one of us is right? Neither one of us. So what is that perfect? It doesn't exist. Become the best you're possibly capable of becoming. Become the best you know how to be. And in the process of doing that, you end up being the real woman, and you end up becoming somebody who, whether you choose it or not, becomes the mentor, becomes the hero or the heroine for others. So as this good girl can begin to let go of struggling to be perfect and step back and recognize who she already is, step back and recognize that she is already loving, she is already present, she is already more than good enough. She is already who she is meant to be at this moment. And so the more we look at becoming our best selves, the more we look at becoming the woman we want to be, not better than, not more than anybody else, the best woman we want to be, the more we are focused on that, the more permission we give others to look at us and say, that's the woman I want to become. That's the woman I want as my mentor. That's the woman I'm creating as my hero. And notice that people that choose us as their mentors, people that choose us as their heroes or heroines, they already possess the qualities we have. They already possess all the work that we've done. We just, in holding that place for them, give them permission to own it within themselves. So as we pointed out in them, as we recognize their growth, as we recognize the wonder and the beauty of who they are as human beings, as embodied souls, the more permission we give them to become somebody else's hero, the more permission we give them to really stand up and own what they already possess. And whether they should or shouldn't need it is irrelevant. Sometimes they need us to give them permission to be who they already are. To me, that is really the best role of a heroine, the best role of a mentor, is in giving somebody else permission to be who they already are as a man, as a woman, anybody, because these messages are universal. I wrote this book to address it to women because most of the clients I work with are women. But there are amazing men out there who are heroes as well. Those men who are real, who are honest, who are present, and filled with empathy and understanding for others, just as we want to be in our work, in our effort to become the best of who we are as embodied souls, spiritual beings walking a human path with everybody else on this planet. Thank you, and please do spend some time looking at in what way are you a hero to others, in what way can you be an even bigger hero to others. And always it's by owning the truth of who you really are, walking in the strength of that, and giving others permission to really become who they already are. Thank you so very much. I will see you next week. Have a blessed week. Bye-bye.